Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Are you confused about Italian nouns and their gender? Because yeah, sometimes we have words that end with an O, sometimes we have words that end with an A, and sometimes it's like, yeah, O, that's masculine, A, that's feminine, but then you begin to see words that end with an E, and you're like, okay, what gender is that? How do I pop it into a sentence? Well, today with this video, I want to dive into the world of gender in terms of nouns in Italian. And I want to teach you how to pick up when a word that finishes with an E is masculine and feminine. I'll give you lots of tips to pick up these things, and at the end it's like a super pro tip, so stay tuned until the end and make sure you do not miss out on that super pro tip on understanding gender in nouns in Italian. Okay, let's start with the easy stuff. Okay, as I quickly mentioned a couple of seconds ago, most Italian nouns do follow a pattern. Okay, so usually nouns that end in O, these nouns are masculine, okay? For example, il libro ends with an O, it's masculine. Il ragazzo ends with an O, I'm talking about the boy, it's masculine. And when we have nouns that end with an A, those are usually feminine. I say usually because Italian is full of exceptions. But if you have la casa ends with an A, it means the house and it's a feminine noun. Same with la ragazza. So before you had ragazzo with an O, the boy, ragazza with an A, the girl. Easy, right? Here comes the twist. So if you've been studying Italian, you have for sure seen some words that actually end with an E. And these words can sometimes be masculine and sometimes be feminine. So this first exception can really confuse learners. But I have to say that there isn't like a single specific rule that helps you to learn these. And I will teach you some tricks, but they don't work 100% of the time because we do have exceptions. But don't worry, I'll give you some strategies, okay, to at least make your guess more accurate. Okay, so I want you to correctly guess what gender the noun is. My first suggestion is to, and I want to say listen to the article, because I'm thinking of a situation where you're listening to another person speak. Okay, so masculine nouns take il as a singular article and I as a plural. Feminine nouns take la for singular and le for plural. So if you are not sure if padre is masculine or singular, listen to the article inside the sentence. Il padre di Mario si chiama Gianni. So you immediately know that it's masculine. La madre di Paola si chiama Giulia. Once again, you're not sure about madre? Is it feminine, masculine? I've never heard that word before. Listen or read, if it's in a book, the article. La madre. So you know that it's a feminine noun. Now, this becomes easier the more you read, the more you listen, because your brain picks up these words, and so you don't have to guess anymore, but they become yours, and you begin to use them correctly and match everything else in the sentence correctly. So if you need to review articles in Italian, do not worry, I have a video on that. I will link it here below. Now, sometimes you are lucky and you have a noun that changes a little bit connected to the gender. Okay, so there's like a natural change of the word that makes you understand if one is masculine or one is feminine. For example, take the noun studente. Studente is the masculine option And studentessa is the feminine option. So if you have a boy student, you would say lo studente. If you have a girl student, you would say la studentessa. So the fact that the ending of the word studentessa changes, it sort of gives you a natural feeling of which one is masculine, which one is feminine. Okay? Obviously, you do have to learn them, okay? But I'm trying to give you ways of picking up how these words can change to make it easier to understand which one's masculine, which one's feminine. So in this case, if you see a word that ends with essa, you know that it's probably the feminine version. Another option, il poeta, the poet, masculine. La poetessa, the poet, feminine. So this is what I say, that sometimes the word changes and it sort of gives you a clear hint of masculine or feminine. Okay? Now, if you have been following my YouTube channel, you know that I truly hate to memorize things, and I really do not suggest it. But in some cases, it's a little bit mandatory, at least if you want to pick up all of the rules immediately and correctly, okay? When you're memorizing things, always put them in a sentence. Don't memorize lists of words, because that is just very difficult and it just can create more confusion. So put them in a sentence that makes sense for you, and it's going to be easier to memorize all of the different parts to it. For example, if I want to take the word studentessa and I want to learn it, why don't you associate it with a person that you know that is a girl and is a student? For example, my friend Stefania is a student. She's learning German. Stefania è una studentessa e sta studiando tedesco. In my head, I will memorize that I'm talking about Stefania, that she's a girl, and so that I need to use studentessa. Trust me, this is a lot better than just simply memorizing lists of words. With this in mind, you will see a list of words here, and with this list of words, take them and put them into sentences. You have all of this also beautifully written out in the PDF that you can download for free. Just click on the link and you will be receiving it in your email box. If you are subscribed to my newsletter, it's already there. Check it out. So these words are the most common Italian words, Italian nouns, that end with an E and that are masculine. Say them with me. Il fiore, il fiume, il mare, il cane, il paese, il nome, il giornale, il canale, il cortile, il piede. Also, reading them aloud, connecting them with the article, helps you to memorize if they're masculine or feminine. Let's look at the feminine ones. So once again, it's not like a full list, because then I would need to take out my dictionary and start reading lists of words, but it's like the most common ones. So start with these, okay? So let's look at the feminine ones that end with an I. La notte, la chiave, la parte, la canzone, la luce, la fine, la televisione, la lezione, la stazione, la vocale. So remember that you do not usually need to memorize these if you are reading or listening, because other parts of the grammar structures inside of a sentence can help you to identify what the noun is. So if you are reading a sentence and it says il fiore rosso sulla collina, you know that il is masculine, so fiore will need to be masculine. And also you have a little hint also of what comes after. You have rosso, the adjective red. It ends with an O. It's masculine too. So since Italian needs to match gender and number, if you're listening or reading, it's easier to pick up if it's masculine or feminine. The problem is when you yourself need to create a sentence. And so this is why it's important to study all of these things, because when you need to speak, your brain needs to remember if a certain noun is feminine or masculine. So I want to give you some tricks that are not foolproof, okay? Because there's always exceptions. But I want to give you some tricks to help your brain decide if a noun is masculine or feminine. So you can remember that most of the nouns that end with ore, O-R-E, those are usually masculine nouns. Check out these words. Il dottore, l'attore, lo scrittore, il narratore, l'editore, il colore, l'amore, il valore, il cuore. O-R-E equals masculine. Same things with words that end with one, O-N-E. Il furgone, il Giappone, il mammone, il calzone, il fifone. Okay? An important exception to remember is the word canzone, which ends with one but is feminine. La canzone. Don't you love exceptions? They're fun. I know. You have a similar, let's say, pattern, like quick rule, also for the words that are actually feminine. So words that end with ZIONE, so Z-I-O-N-E, are always feminine, okay? We actually saw one before, la stazione, l'informazione, l'emozione, la lezione, la porzione, l'opzione. Also the words that end with SIONE, S-I-O-N-E, are feminine. Just read out with me this list. La confusione, la passione, la versione, l'illusione. So the counterpart of the words that we saw before for the masculine options that end in O-R-E and that are jobs or professions have their feminine version that end with trice. So if you have a male actor, l'attore, the female would be l'attrice, la scrittrice, la narratrice, la creatrice. It's not always like this, because with dottore, you have la dottoressa. Even if the word dottore now can be used for both masculine and feminine. Okay, so we have created a little gender neutral word for that. Also, you have a list of words that are not jobs or roles that end with ice and they are feminine. For example, la lavatrice, la cicatrice, okay? These are feminine too. They're not jobs, but they're feminine. And with ice, trice. There is also a very tiny group of words that end with ase, ase, A-S-E. That is formed of feminine words. For example, la fase, la base, la frase, learn those for now, okay? And did you know that some words can actually be both masculine and feminine? Yup, that's a lot of fun. Okay, those words that end with ante or ente, so ante or ente, can actually have both gender. The gender in this case is usually decided when the word is associated to a specific person that identifies with a gender. For example, take the word cantante, which means singer. Pop in the correct article to identify the gender of the artist, and you can have il cantante, male singer, la cantante, female singer. Okay, so in this case, the gender of the word depends on the rest of the sentence and how the person identifies. Same thing with the words that end with ente, like paziente, cliente, okay? Create a sentence, okay? Begin to use these correctly. Pick up all of these exceptions and all of these rules. So, for example, if I have this sentence, il paziente è molto stanco, if I'm isolating the word paziente by itself, I don't know if it's masculine or feminine because it could be both, but I do have an article, il, so I know that it's a male, and then I also have the word stanco, which is matched to say that it's a male patient. Il paziente è molto stanco. If it was a girl or a lady, I would have said la paziente è molto stanca. Okay? So since we always have to match, the rest of the sentence helps you to identify if I'm talking about a girl or a boy. Take the word cliente. It's the same situation. If I say la cliente si è arrabbiata molto con la commessa, if I'm isolating the word cliente, I'm not sure if it's male or female, but I have all of the other options. I have la, and I have arrabbiata, which ends with an A. So everything around the sentence can help me. So what is my personal pro tip that I want to give you to help you to learn these words? And I have to say that this goes beyond the gender and number of words, of nouns, but is vocabulary in general. What is my pro tip? Start reading. Reading helps you because when you read, you pick up the structure of the sentence, you pick up the word, you're contextualizing the word, so it's easier for your brain to understand what the word means, even if you've never read the word before. Reading even a little bit, as like a little tiny paragraph every day, helps you to master and level up your comprehension, your use of Italian, because once you know what that word means, you're going to use it in your next conversation. If you're looking for a very easy reading practice, you might want to check out my Italian short stories. It's only $5. And what is available in this short story course? Well, you have obviously an article, you have a listening exercise because you have audio attached to each story. So you can read it along with me, you can read it aloud, you can check pronunciation, and then you have some exercises. You can highlight words that you don't know, you can read it again, you can make sentences of your own, and it's a very fun $5 course that can help you immediately to level up your Italian. If you want more information on this course, check the link here below. So I hope I cleared up some doubts on gender in the Italian nouns, and let me know in the comments what you think, and I will see you next week. Un bacio, ciao!